Hello Internet, welcome to the channel. My name's Frankie, and in today's video we're going to be building for the animal with the highest and strongest bite force in all of the animal kingdom. That is of course the saltwater crocodile. Now the very first thing that I'm going to be doing for this habitat is using our terrain altering tools in order to dig out a nice pit. This pit is of course going to be the swimming area, as these crocodiles are going to need a lot of water and space for them to just swim about and generally be crocodiles, because when they're outside of water all they basically do is bask, just sit in the sun and have a little sunbathe. So I want to make sure they've got plenty of room for swimming and doing more crocodile-y things. And once I was done with the water source shape, I decided that I actually wanted this to be a bit more of a man-made looking water source. Oftentimes I will make sure that it looks nice and natural, but that's not what I'm going for in this zoo. This is meant to be a very intentional zoo. Whilst the foliage might look natural, I do want to make sure that certain bits look as if though they are purpose-built for our animals. So in order to do that, I'm going to line this pool with concrete. I'm not going to go all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to make sure there's a natural substrate at the surface. At the bottom of this pool, just to make sure that we can have plants growing and stuff, but we're going to have a nice concrete perimeter. So to do this I'm going to use a concrete pillar from, I believe, the classic set, and then we're also going to use some concrete panels just to create a nice smooth edge to these pools, and then we can copy and paste it along and make sure that it runs the entire perimeter of this pool. When it came to creating a habitat house, I decided to not go for a fully fledged complicated building, and this is because when I've seen crocodiles out in zoos and stuff, in particular Crocodile Park in Gran Canaria is what I'm thinking of, they didn't have any habitat houses. Instead they relied on trees and stuff to give shade for our animals and making sure they have plenty of basking space, because I mean, it's not like these guys are going to be going down for a nap inside, really. That's just, I don't know, for some reason these crocodiles that I've seen don't seem to have habitat houses attached. So I decided not to go for one, instead just create something really simple, make it look as if though that it was a old shed or something that was here already, and we're just repurposing it. And the blueprint is of course from the Australia pack. I'm not building it from scratch, but it does the job. Then it's time to start littering about our enrichment items and make sure we have a good idea of where the animals are going to be travelling. We're going to space them about just so that they do move around and use up the whole habitat. The barrier for this habitat isn't going to be anything super showy. Instead we are going to use the chain link fence from the in-game barriers, and we're going to make sure that they're curved and just run them around the perimeter of this habitat. Then afterwards I'm going to use various small faux rocks to create kind of a wall of rubble that's going to cover the bottom half of this fence to make it look a little bit nicer and kind of set the scene, but overall we're going to keep it fairly cheap looking. And later on, when I'm experimenting with decorations and stuff, I come across an Oceania log that has a couple of pieces of rope around it, and I'm going to position those over the fence posts just to help tie it all in and make it look even more custom than it already is with the stones at the bottom. That's a really simple way to make the in-game barriers a bit more personal. So if you're not a fan of creating your own barriers and stuff, I would suggest that you use a chain link fence or something, position it how you want, and then look at covering up the fence posts or covering the bottom or something. Just masking what's already there really helps to create a bit more of a custom feel to your zoos. For the mud pit in this habitat, I have pulled up the terrain as much as I can around the edges to mask the wooden frame. However, due to it being so close to water, it doesn't come up nearer this edge, which is a bit frustrating. So instead I'm going to use some rocks that are appropriate for our crocodile and mask the edge of these horrible wooden pieces. I really don't like the frame on this mud pit, and I will mask it as often as I can. We're just going to create a bit of a natural looking rocky outcrop over here, because simply covering the wooden pieces does look very forced and it doesn't look right. So making sure that we create a bit more of a larger rocky feature is going to help to blend it into the surroundings. Also, whilst I was looking through the Oceania building pieces, I came across this massive shipwreck which just looks quite frankly awesome, and we're going to put that at the back of the habitat as well as a bit of scenery, and to kind of suggest that our crocodiles are pirates, because who doesn't love a pirate crocodile? Aside from potentially Captain Hook, he had a bit of an issue, didn't he? Or was that an alligator? No, it was in the sea, wasn't it? So I guess it must have been a crocodile? I'm not sure. Yeah, anyway, we're going to put this pirate ship kind of thing into our habitat, and then those black rocks, they don't go with the rocks that we're using in our habitat, so I'm going to replace those with the appropriate ones. And I think it's a really nice bit of scenery at the back of the habitat to kind of draw your eye to that area. I'm also going to add a couple more decorations from the Oceania pack just to go with a bit of theming. Basically, we're going to add this lovely canoe at the back of the habitat, and then we're also going to sink the 3 different surfboard designs into the sand, have them at angles so it kind of looks like they're being stored there for future use in case our crocodiles fancy a surf. Next, it was time to move on to what is always the best bit of any habitat build, and that is adding all the plants, all of the lovely flowers and shrubs, and in this case a few weeds, and just make sure this habitat looks alive. However, the crocodiles do have a very low coverage threshold, which means I can't add as many plants as I would necessarily like. So what I'm going to be doing is, around the rocky outcrop that we designed earlier near the mud pit, we're going to use various weeds and stuff, make sure that that looks quite alive, and then we're going to try and line the back perimeter with palm trees. We're also going to put some around the front as well, but I want to be focusing at the back to kind of mask the fact that that is the back of the habitat. And then we're going to go for some smaller plants as well, but we do actually need to keep it quite light for this habitat, which is very unusual for how I build, but you know, that is the price you pay when playing in franchise mode, and it's one of those challenges that I quite like to have to deal with. So yeah, that is kind of it for the habitat, and then it's going to be time to move outside and integrate it into the rest of the zoo. Out the front of this habitat, I'm going to use a couple of the Oceania blueprints in order to create a bit more atmosphere and make it really feel like a beachy area of the zoo. Could I make these buildings from scratch? Yeah, probably. I mean, I made a pretty complicated viewing gallery in the last video, but I just don't really want to. I want to utilise what we have. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to be starting out with Oceania toilet right in the middle of this section, and then either side of it we're going to add one of the single shops, making sure to rotate them and adjust them so they really fit this area. Then it's a matter of linking up a few fences to try and keep our guests in certain areas, add some donation bins and rubbish bins as well, and then we're going to cover this area with plant life, making sure to separate this path from the main path, ensuring that this does still feel like the Oceania area. I say Oceania, but what I really mean is just beach area. All of our water-faring creatures are over here, so that is what we are kind of aiming for, the beachy vibes. And with all the wildlife in this outside area complete, that kind of means the entire build is done, and I'm very aware that I haven't left much time for a floaty fact of the day, so we will move on to that in a second before getting onto the cinematics. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, it really helps, and most importantly, share the video with somebody you think would enjoy it. That helps loads more. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I will see you later.